The War Council of the Gloranthian Empire convened in stunned silence. Before them, the holographic display flickered, showing the smoldering remains of their Grand Armada. A fleet that had once been the terror of 1,000 star systems. They had been locked in a bitter war of attrition against a species from a distant spiral armor bipedal race, calling themselves humans. Grand Marshal Vorlag, his 4 manipulators steepled in a gesture of deep contemplation, finally broke the silence. His voice, usually a booming resonance that could quell riots, was now a strained whisper. Report? The intelligence officer, a younger Gloranthian named Kale, trembled as he stepped forward. Grand Marshal, the data is confirmed. The human force we engaged, Jet. The one that just annihilated the 3rd and 7th fleets at the Epsilon Eridani blockade, was designated by their own command as the 4th Expeditionary Marine Division. Vorlag's primary eyes narrowed. Expeditionary of Forward Unit. What is the significance? Kale swallowed hard, the bioluminescent patterns on his neck flickering erratically, a sure sign of extreme stress. Sir, we have new intelligence, intercepted signals, decrypted logs from captured human data cores. Our initial assessment of their military structure was catastrophically wrong. A low murmur rippled through the council chamber. The Gloranthians were masters of intelligence. They had studied the humans for a full cycle before initiating hostilities. They had mapped their command structure, estimated their industrial capacity, and calculated their total force projection. The war was supposed to be swift. Instead, it had become a meat grinder. Kale brought up a new file. It was a complex organizational chart. We believed the Grand Army of the Republic was their entire military. We thought the Expeditionary Marines were their elite shock troops, their main fighting force. We were wrong. Sui pointed to a small, almost insignificant box on the chart. This is the 4th Expeditionary Marine Division. They fall under the command of the United Nations Space Command Marine Corps. He then zoomed out. The box representing the Marine Corps was just one of dozens under a larger entity, labeled UNSC. Then he zoomed out again. Phew! The UNSC was itself just one branch under something called the Sol System Defense Force. The chart kept expanding. The Sol System Defense Force was merely the local defense grid for their home system. There are others, Kale said, his voice cracking. The Commonwealth Fleet, the Pan-Pacific Alliance Navy, the Eurasian Federation Cosmo Forces. They are not allies, Grand Marshal. They are all human. They are all part of a federated command structure, known as the Terran Combined Arms Command. The silence in the room was now absolute, heavy, and suffocating. The implications were dawning on every member of the council. They hadn't been fighting the human military. Vorlag slowly rose to his full height, his gaze fixed on the impossibly vast chart. Explain the numbers, Kale. Quantify this. Kale's manipulator trembled as he keyed in the final command. Their display shifted to show 2 silhouettes of battleships, the Gloranthian dreadnought. Their pride, and the human Valiant-class cruiser they had faced so often. Sir, our entire Grand Armada, at its peak, consisted of approximately 1 million capital ships. We have lost 60% of that fleet fighting this single marine division, which fields roughly 50,000 ships. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. Our intelligence estimates, based on the new data, suggest that the total combined military strength of the human race, all their factions, navies, and armies combined, is somewhere in the order of 500 million capital ships, with a reserve fleet and planetary defense grids numbering in the billions. Their primary shipyards, located in orbital rings around their gas giants, can produce our entire fleet's original number in a single solar year. A council member collapsed, his respiratory system failing from shock. Medics rushed to his side. Vorlag didn't even flinch. His mind was racing, re-evaluating every battle, every loss, every single human tactic. The reckless charges that seemed desperate, they weren't desperation. They were the actions of a force that considered its 50,000 ships utterly expendable. The unorthodox strategies that broke every rule of established space warfare, they weren't born of ignorance. They were experiments, field tests, conducted by a force with limitless resources to burn. They had been fighting a research and development team with live ammunition. Why? Vorelag asked the room, his voice filled with a dawning horror. Why would they send such a small force? Why not just crush us from the start? Hale displayed one last fragment of data. It was a partial audio log, recovered from the wreckage of a human cruiser's black box. The voice was calm, almost casual, laced with a strange, lilting accent. The recording crackled to life. Yeah, Central Command wants a full report on Gloranthian fleet tactics. Seems they use a standard trisometric assault pattern. Kinda predictable. We've been letting M push us back here and there, just to see what else they've got in their playbook. We've got about another 3 months of war on the schedule before the real forces from First Fleet arrive to relieve us. Honestly, Billy, I'm getting bored. The locals are putting up a decent fight for their size. I'll give them that. But it's like, I don't know. It's like fighting a particularly angry nest of space badgers. You respect their ferocity. But, you could just call an exterminator at any time. Anyway, how are things back on Titan? Did you catch the Grav Ball finals? ... The recording cut out. The chamber was tomb quiet. The truth was worse than any of them could have imagined. This wasn't a war. To the humans, it was a scouting mission. They weren't trying to win. They were taking notes. They were learning. The Gloranthian Empire, the conquerors of 1,000 worlds, the apex predators of the galaxy, had been the subject of their lesson plan. Grand Marshal Vorlag looked at the faces of his council, the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, now pale with a terror they had never known. He slowly sank back into his command chair, the weight of his civilization's impending doom crushing him. "Kale," he said, his voice a dead monotone. "Send a message for unconditional surrender. Tell them we are very, very sorry for the inconvenience." But he knew, deep in his 3 hearts, that it was far too late for apologies. The exterminators had already been called.